Hi, welcome to Five from the Archive. This is a podcast where we ask wonderful photographers to come on and share just 5 images which they feel are important to them, and it can be anything that they wish to include. This time, it's all about flower photography from the fabulous Kathleen Clemons. Kathleen, if I can just welcome you to this little podcast, this Five from the Archive podcast, I really appreciate you taking the time, just for the second time this week, taking the time to come, to come and chat. We may talk about that a little bit, you never know, but the second time to come and chat. And I know you've got a short series coming up on Camversation as well, so I'm really excited about that. But this isn't about that. This is just about you and about your photography, about your beautiful images. I have thoroughly enjoyed your images for such a long time, and I know I've been in contact with you for a while, so it's nice that we're able to get together, overcome various issues and get together and share your work. So Kathleen, welcome. Thanks very much for coming.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for your flexibility in timing and waiting for me. I appreciate that. I'm excited to be here. I'm really excited to do my 2 presentations for you that we have upcoming as well.
Yeah, not far away now,
No,
actually.
nope,
Not far away. No.
coming right up.
I'll put the date of the presentations on the end of this because, as usual, I've forgotten off the top of my head, but I'll put them on the end.
Same.
I'll put them on the end. They'll be fine.
Well,
People will get that. People will get that. Now, Kathleen, I know you as an outstanding floral photographer, and Conversation is full of people who requested you, requested your work, requested your photography. And it's a big group of people, it's a big group of creative people, big group of supportive people. And so your name kept coming up and up and up. And I really enjoy your work. So we know you for your floral work, but I'm interested in learning more about you as well
yeah.
and your personal history, your background, how you got to where you are now, perhaps. So I wonder if I could pass over to you for a few minutes just to share a little bit of that background with us.
Sure. So I've always been interested in the arts. Let's just go through the list of the things I tried before I found photography. It's a long list. Pen and ink, watercolor, macrame, stencil design, batik. What else? Jewelry making. I mean, I always felt like that's where I should head, but um, when I was graduating from high school, I really wanted to go into the arts, and believe it or not, there wasn't photography offered in my high school. That's how old I am. But and I wanted to go into the arts, and I talked to my advisor about it when I was getting ready to graduate and looking at college, and talked about art, and he said, the suicide rate amongst commercial artists is far too high. You shouldn't do it. Well, there's some wonderful advice for an 18-year-old, right? So I went into education, which was fine. I love teaching, and being able to combine teaching with my photography has been a bonus. So it all worked out well. But I really, and I was always the person with the camera growing up and through high school and through college. But I was shooting with those little Instamatic cameras on automatic. I had no clue what I was doing. And then in 2003, my mom was diagnosed with a serious illness. And I know myself well enough to know that I was going to need a stress relief. I signed up for my first photography class, and it changed my life. I have what the instructor, Brian Peterson, I took his online class, Understanding Exposure. And he said to me at the beginning of the class that he thought I was a natural in terms of composition, but he did not understand the technical. I'm not a math person, and that all seemed like math to me. F-stops, numbers. Didn't understand it. He's a gifted teacher. He was. He passed recently. And a natural teacher. And as soon as I understood exposure, my world changed. Knowing that I could control depth of field was huge for me. I was like, I can do that. I can add blur. I mean, I love blur. We're going to be talking about that. And so it changed my life. And within 2 years, he hired me to teach for him. Yeah. And so that's basically how I got my start. Actually started photographing sunrises on my front lawn. I have 3 sons, and as they were growing up, the only alone time I had was before they got up. So I would get up really early in the morning, and my house faces east, and I'm lucky enough to live across from the world's only cribstone bridge, which is this fabulous curved bridge. And I would run outside as the sun was rising and photograph the sunrise. And it taught me a lot about the quality of light, temperature of light, and how quickly it changes. So it wasn't a bad way to start, but Brian eventually kind of gave me a little hint that it was time to get off the front lawn and find some other subjects.
Yeah, but actually, I think it's a really great point because sometimes we forget about the things that are closest to us as well, don't we?
Right, right,
And what
right.
great topics and what great subjects they would be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
that's
from a teaching point of view, then, once you started moving into teaching photography, as opposed to a general teaching background, if you like, once you grabbed hold of that knowledge of exposure and the mathematical side that you avoided, did that make you a more confident photographer as well because you were teaching it to others?
um I think the confidence came first,
Mm.
really, in knowing that my skills were strong enough to teach. Um and the teaching background, you if you know your subject, you I think your teaching is stronger. So I don't think that it really happened once I started. I think it was already there.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. I always told my students that a good teacher is a good teacher regardless of what they're teaching.
Yeah, right, right. It's like the same thing though with photography. Tony Sweet said to me, I took a class with Tony Sweet when I first started as well, like my second year shooting, and we had to share photos at the beginning of it. And I had a couple of portraits and some landscapes, and I said to him when the portrait came up, I'm not a portrait photographer, and he looked at me and said, Kathleen, if you can shoot, you can shoot.
Tony's great.
If
I'm lucky that he's presented on Camversation as
Yeah,
well.
it's
Tony is
wonderful.
absolutely wonderful,
Yeah.
wonderful. Oh, thank you so much. And from your perspective now then, so now that your children have grown
Mhm.
and perhaps you're not restricted to the early mornings, you might still be restricted to the early
Yeah,
mornings,
no.
but perhaps that you're not restricted to that. What kind of approaches do you have for making sure that you get enough of your own photography? Because I think we can all empathize with the fact that when you are teaching and helping others, you do less of it yourself.
Right.
So how do you sort of ensure that you get your own photography fix?
I grow my own flowers. So I don't have to go anywhere, I just step outside. Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
addicted to dahlias. I planted about 120 last year, so I don't have
Okay.
to go very far. I have a friend who's a plant addict, and she lives across the street. So between my gardens and her gardens, I don't have to plan for it. I can just pop outside and pop back in the house and, don't really have to travel, which is wonderful.
Yeah. It also helps having someone who's equally geeky quite close, doesn't it?
I'll get a text, "Oh my poppies are blooming, come over." Uh,
Yeah, absolutely.
it's wonderful. Wonderful.
Working with somebody else really helps to motivate.
Yeah,
It really, really does.
yeah.
Oh, and so are a great many of the pictures that we can see on your beautiful website then, are a great many of those flowers that you've grown yourself and that you've cultivated and you've got that total control over the environment as well?
I think 2 of them are from her garden, my neighbors. Um, and I think the rest are mine, so
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Well, we're
yeah.
very much looking forward to seeing them then. Thank you very much. Thanks very much, Kathleen. So we've got your first from the five now, and I'm really interested in this because I've not seen this one before. So I'll pass over you to talk us through this one, please.
Okay, so when you asked me to pick 5 from the archives, I found it really difficult. How do I share only 5? But I decided to share my 5 favorite ways to photograph flowers, one from each. All right? So, for this one, I really love selective focus and I love blur, as I mentioned. And so that's why I chose this one. This was with my 180 millimeter lens at f4.5, shooting through foreground foliage. That's what's causing that beautiful green blur, using a wide aperture and getting my lens very close to foreground foliage, shooting through that foliage and selectively focusing on just one portion, which creates a lovely in-camera blur and painterly look to the subject. And this was done at my neighbor's garden across the street with one of her new irises.
Yeah, and the use of your foreground object, so your foreground element to create this blur is absolutely outstanding.
Thank you.
I am going to be cheeky and
Yeah.
say, how many times did you photograph to get exactly what you wanted? How many takes did you have to make
Oh,
before you got to this? Or is it the point where you're so experienced with this, you just lay down and go for it?
yeah. I've been using my 180 millimeter lens since 2006. So it's pretty intuitive for me to use that lens at this time. I think this was a one and done
Mm.
shot.
Mm. I
Very
can see,
little
yeah.
post processing. I don't even think I had to do any cleanup really on this one, which is wonderful.
And actually, that notion of no post processing, I don't usually ask about processing
Yeah.
during these, but the fact that you've had to do no post processing is just superb. I mean, this is an absolutely beautiful image, especially with the droplet capture as well.
Yes, thank you. And it had just opened, so it was fresh. So
Mm.
no maintenance needed there as well.
Yeah, no virtual gardening.
No. Oh, I like that.
Thank you very much, Kathleen. Absolutely beautiful image.
Thank you.
And I hope you do print some of these, by the way. Do you print these and put these on your walls at all?
I do have, for years I didn't have any of my work on my walls, and I decided,
Mm.
well, that's ridiculous. I should have some of my work up.
Yeah.
And yes, I do. I'm trying to convince myself to print more. Joyce Tennyson, who is one of the most amazing women photographers in history. I was talking to her one day. She also lives in Maine, and she asked me about printing. And I said, "Oh, I don't print very much." And she stopped and said, "Kathleen, you need to print. And if Joyce Tennyson tells you you need to print, you need to print."
You need
So
to
I'm
print.
really trying to make myself print more.
I think it gets those things out of the digital dungeon, though, doesn't it? And
Yes.
gets them into real life.
And watching a print come out of the printer is such an amazing feeling. It is pretty wonderful. So I'm trying. I'm doing better.
Yeah, super, super. Outstanding shot. Thank you so much for your first one.
All right. Let's see.
Fantastic. Yeah, well, this is on your website, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
This is, yes.
Yeah,
Oh,
thank you.
well, thank you so much for your second one. And as I've just said to you, this is on your website. So I love, love, love this image. I'm really keen to hear about this one as
Thank
well,
you.
Kathleen. Please take us away.
All right. Thank you so much. So the second category here, first was blur. I like to photograph flowers that are imperfect. For me, they're perfectly imperfect because it's the imperfection that makes them perfect for me. So this was again at my neighbor Stacy's house, and she grows a lot of poppies. And right next to this one were some perfectly fresh, beautiful poppies. But then there was this one where some of the petals from another poppy had landed on this poppy and it was drooping. And I just thought it was so, so beautiful. I named it A Soft Place to Land. And at the time, I was awaiting the birth of my latest granddaughter. And so when she was born, I printed this for her nursery with her name on it. And I think that's why this one meant so much to me because I immediately thought of her, pinks and purples and baby girls and it was a metaphor for me about her arrival. So, yeah, and it's the imperfection that makes the shot for me. If those extra petals weren't there, no, I wouldn't have been as interested.
I think there's something about us as photographers that look for the imperfect, isn't there? There's something that looks for something that's a little bit different and unusual and something that you wouldn't expect.
I think most definitely. I mean, I've been photographing flowers for 20 years. Like, how many daisies can you photograph, Peter? How many poppies? So if they're not different, I think I probably would have gotten bored. And I'm not bored at all because there's always something different. You just need to look a little deeper sometimes to see it.
And so is that kind of one of your principal motivators now then, Kathleen? Do you, because you've done so much of the recording
But
aspect over that 20-year period, do you now look for the intricacies and the unique approaches to flowers
always,
like this?
always. And I think I always have, but it's even more important to me now, I think, because of my history with flower photography. Yeah, and I do believe that the older I get, the deeper I see. So
Mm.
that's kind of, I mean, there has to be some bonus for getting older, right? And for me, that's it. I think my photography is stronger. My vision is stronger for sure.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely outstanding image. That is superb, and this is one I haven't seen before. So, Kathleen, please do take us away on this one.
All right. So the third way that I like to photograph and capture flowers is using backgrounds that I've created, using textured backgrounds. Although I mean, I call them textures, but textures to me have a lot of texture to them. They have a lot of tooth, and mine are softer and more painterly. And I really love the way that they can change a photo. So when I shot this, I shot it outside with a pretty glaring neon green background. It was horrible. But I loved the flower. Again, I'm looking for perfectly imperfect. There are petals missing. The petals have a mind of their own. It's not balanced, it's not symmetrical, and I love that, but the green background was just so strong. So in post processing, I added one of my textures. And when I choose a texture, I try and choose one that has the colors of my subject in it. And I thought, I sometimes I have to experiment with a couple, but I put this one on first and went, oh. And then all it needed was just a small bit of masking around the center of the flower, and it completely changed the image. So
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the perfectly imperfect idea or the perfectly imperfect theme is such an antidote to the Instagram perfect
I'm
culture
right.
that we have across society at the moment, isn't it?
Yes, yes, for sure. And there are a lot of imperfect subjects out there. Let's celebrate them as much as we celebrate the perfect, pristine flowers. Yeah,
Thank you. Can I ask you about your composition on this, if I
yeah,
may?
yeah.
Again, without going into too much detail, I perceive this, and please tell me if I'm wrong or whether you intended it to be different. I perceive this as the imperfect, perfect, also accentuated by the fact that you've chosen to remove the top part of
Right,
the flower as
right.
well. So I'm interested in your approach to cropping and composition here because I find this really powerful.
Thank you. I crop in camera. I very
Ah,
rarely crop in post processing. I chose to do that because I see my flowers as flower portraits, and this is a more intimate portrait. When you're photographing people, when you move in close and you cut a little off the top, it's a more intimate view of the person. And I just thought it put a stronger emphasis on the bottom parts of the flower to move in close. And I did do a couple of different, I usually do really work my subjects, a couple of different compositions, but I loved this one. And I think it's important for people to understand that you don't need to include the whole flower.
yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah. I think that's an interesting obstacle that people have to get past,
right.
isn't it? That we don't have to include everything. Sometimes what we exclude is as important as what we include.
Exactly.
Mm, mm. Thank you. Thank you. You do all of your cropping, or most of your cropping in camera then. So from a post-processing point of view, it's predominantly corrections or
Yes.
alterations to how you'd like it rather than cropping. That's quite unusual, isn't it?
I think it is, but remember, I took my first photography class with Brian Peterson, who was shooting film at the time.
Mm,
So he
mm.
taught us to get it right in camera. And I think
Yeah.
my focus on that makes my composition stronger, makes me slow
Mhm.
down, be a little more careful. I mean, with the size of the files in today's digital cameras, I mean, cropping is fine if that's what you want to do, but I prefer to get my composition at the time of the shoot. Most of the time.
Quite a different image
Yes.
on this one.
Yeah.
Yeah, fascinating. I'll pass over to you again. Thank you.
Okay. So my fourth way that I love to photograph flowers is I love aging or aged flowers. I don't call them dead flowers. I call them aged flowers. So this is a hydrangea from my garden, and I had it about a year before I photographed it. And I don't do anything special to draw my flowers. I don't hang them upside down. I don't do anything you're supposed to do. As the water runs out, if I find them interesting, I just let the water run out and move them to a clean, dry vase. And I love hydrangeas when they're fresh, but I also love dried hydrangeas. And I have a couple of the plants in the yard. But so I finally, after a year, took this one. I shot it outside, put a piece of white foam core on a table, and set the flower up in a flower frog, little metal guy with little pointed metal tips that hold a stem. And there were two leaves originally, but they were merging together. So I did remove a leaf. And yeah, and very little post processing here, a little bit of brightening. And that's it. It didn't have a whole lot of saturation left, so I didn't have to do anything to, reduce the saturation. But gosh, I looked through my viewfinder and just went, oh, I love the gesture of the leaf, and it's one of my favorites. But I love aging flowers. I think sometimes they gain more personality, more character. You get sometimes intensified petal color, intensified curls and texture, and I find them fascinating.
Absolutely. And the fact that you planned so far ahead
Yeah.
as well. So am I correct in thinking then that you have banks of flowers at various levels of age?
If you could see the desk where I am, there are shelves with dahlias, roses, rudbeckia, cosmos, hydrangeas. Yes. And it's wonderful. I mean, I live in Maine, so my shooting window is not long. But I can shoot all winter long with my dried flowers, which is wonderful. Or on rainy days, or if you live in a climate where it's too warm to shoot, having something that you can just pull off a shelf that's dried and ready to go is a wonderful
Yeah.
thing.
It's a great idea. It really is. And you said that you shot this outside with just
Mhm.
some white background.
Yeah,
If I could just ask, and I know you're probably going to chat about this in your
yeah,
workshops, and this may not be the point for it,
that's okay.
but what's your approach to lighting? Are you always using natural lighting, or do you use any artificial light or anything like that?
I'm completely natural light, and this was
Mm,
just a cloudy day, which is my absolute favorite light. Soft, flat, whatever you want to call it. I absolutely love it. So I didn't have to modify the light whatsoever.
yeah, has a real timeless appeal, and I bet you did look through that viewfinder and go, "Wow."
Plus, yeah. And part of it I think was the leaf. I absolutely loved the leaf, and I sometimes with the dried flowers, the leaves are not real attractive, and I'll remove them. But I just loved that one leaf curled to the side. So I liked the leaf as much as the blossom.
I bet, I bet. Gosh, and you must well, I say you must, I'm going to rephrase that. Is this something that you've come back to and re-edited at all, or is it that situation where you were so happy with it
Yeah,
in that first instance?
right. No, I didn't have to do anything else. There really wasn't another composition for me besides this one or point of view because I didn't want to lose the angle that leaf was at. So this was probably it.
Yeah, absolutely beautiful image. Timeless. Quite different. Again, we've had a real variety. I knew this would be a lovely time, lovely experience chatting with you. So quite a variety with this last one as well, Kathleen. Please take us through this one.
So, the fifth and final way that I love to photograph flowers are frozen flowers. So I started experimenting with this for a couple of years. I kind of started by accident where I had some flowers that had aged and didn't age beautifully, and I threw them outside onto a planter, and the planter ended up, and this was in the winter, ended up being a place where our gutter leaked onto it and the flowers froze in the planter. And I went outside and went, oh, look at that. I mean, that's different. Again, I'm always looking for different. So I thought, well, let me experiment with freezing, sticking perfectly good flowers in the freezer. And I fell in love with it. And I started sharing them, and my students were like, "How are you doing this?" And so I spent a year and a half fine tuning my process and making every mistake that you could make so that my students wouldn't have to make those mistakes. And I absolutely love it. I do it year round, but it's a wonderful resource for me in the wintertime when I don't have a lot to shoot. So these are two tulips that I put together in a shallow pan and added a little water to anchor them and then added a little bit more water. I do love having some of the petals come up through the ice because I like that contrast between the texture of the natural petal and the ice. I don't like them completely submerged, and I think it gives the image more depth doing this. But yeah, and this is one of my very favorites, of the frozen flowers. I mean, I have probably 6 pans in the freezer right now. So I had to buy a
No
separate
judgment.
freezer just for my flowers.
But no judgment. I was just going to say about when you mentioned the extra texture from the
Yeah.
petals pointing through the ice, that must almost add a sense of relief to the printed image or to the real image as well as when you're seeing it sort
Yeah.
of physically. It
Yes.
really
Yeah.
must add that.
I have been printing them on Epson velvet paper, which has sort of a watercolor quality to it, and the frozen flowers are absolutely stunning on that paper.
Yeah, thank you. And again, this may be something you talk about in your workshop, so I'm not going to ask you for any hidden secrets or anything like that. That's not what this is about. You've created a beautiful, almost milky texture to that there, a milky color.
Mhm.
Is that something that you've worked hard as well to work on different approaches to freezing it, or is it a case of it's frozen there, oxygen bubbles in there?
Yes. So, I've experimented with a lot of different types of water. We have well water. My mom has town water, as we would call it. And I've tried distilled water, but this is just from our well. And so it's a little cloudy, but I like it cloudy. I don't like
Mm,
distilled water with millions of bubbles. It's too busy for me. I mean, I think a lot of people do that and their art is beautiful, but it's not me. So I don't want things to get too busy. I think this is a very peaceful, calming image. And so I just like a little bit of a milky texture. Also, I shot this right in the pan. So it's not like I backlit it where, you would see stronger texture coming through, which I do sometimes, but I didn't with this one. I just leaned the pan up on my deck on a cloudy day and shot this at f/22 with my 180 millimeter lens again, and it was
yeah.
done.
Beautifully simple, beautifully simple. And what's your window of opportunity before they start to melt?
Depends on the time of year. If it's really cold out, then I don't have a problem. But I'll shoot early in the morning when it's not quite as warm. And what's really wonderful, if you shoot on a warm day, and when you first pull the pan out of the freezer, often you get frost on the petals, which I absolutely love. But the humidity has to be just right. The temperature has to be just right. I can't zero in on when I'm going to get it and when I'm not. But with a flower with dark petals, it's amazing to have the frost crystals as well. And again, it's adding another layer of texture.
Absolutely. God, I want to be there when you're doing this next time. We were just saying about how far you are away from where I'm going to be in August. Too far, but
Yeah.
I feel like I'd love to give this a go. Absolutely
Uh,
love to. And have you tried this with a wide variety of flowers, or have you found that certain flowers are better than others in your experience?
Oh, most definitely. Some are better than others. That was part of my year and a half experimentation. There's a lot of randomness to this process. If you're a person who cannot embrace randomness, it's not for you. Because when you open the freezer in the morning, you don't know what you're going to find. Sometimes the flowers turn brown, which is you can make them black and white or, tone them blue tone or whatever you want to do with it, but they don't all freeze in a lovely way. Let's say. So I have my favorites: cosmos, tulips, some dahlias, some will turn brown. Chrysanthemums almost always turn brown. So there's a lot of experimentation there for sure.
Oh, absolutely outstanding. I have thoroughly enjoyed seeing these five images and how you've approached it as well. Despite saying you thought it was a tricky thing to do, how you've approached it is wonderful. Thank you so much, Kathleen.
Thank you.
Thank you. And before we say goodbye, you've kindly had a chance to think about someone who people should go and have a look at their work. And can I pass over to you to share that person, please?
Yes, yes. I would recommend that people have a look at the work of Jackie Kramer. She's one of my closest friends, and it's lovely to have someone who shares your passion as a close friend. The way that Jackie uses color, understands and uses color is extraordinary. She's not afraid of bold colors. She blends them beautifully. Her work is really amazing.
Fantastic. I'll pop a link to Jackie's website in the description as well. And I will just say to everybody, I've recently added Jackie on Facebook, and I can absolutely agree with that bold colour.
Yes, yes.
Absolutely outstanding. So, Kathleen, thank you so much for coming along today and giving your time. Second time lucky. We managed to get there the second time, didn't we?
Yes, we did. Thank you for waiting for me.
Not a problem at all. Not a problem. And you've got your sessions coming up later this month on Camversation, which we are
Yes,
really, really looking forward to as well.
thank you.
So, thank you so much. I'll pop a link on the end to your website and all of your work as well. But we look forward very much to seeing you live on those presentations as well, Kathleen.
All right, wonderful. See you soon.
And just to remind you, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this fabulous podcast. Kathleen is joining Camversation for 2 separate workshops in May. These are already really, really popular. We do not have a limit on numbers. Please do have a look at the website. Come along if you think you'd like to hear more of Kathleen and more about her work.